Hey, all, welcome to the podcast. Here's a little treat. I've been doing some fill-in over at the AM 950, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota radio station here in Minneapolis, where I used to have my radio show. And I'm kicking around the idea of maybe being the drive time guy there. But anyway, right now I'm just doing a fill-in. And the show yesterday, I just liked it so much, I decided to give it to you as a little podcast. So here it is, the AM 950 drive time from June 14th. All right, it's going to have all that like radio station stuff going on. I have a producer and everything at the radio station that, plays bumper music ahead of time and get cut up in commercials. It's an hour-long radio show. So here it is. Enjoy. AM 950, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota. A little Bruce Springsteen. Appreciate it. Yeah.
No, you're looking for it.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. Eric and I, Doug Pagitt here, sitting in at the 4 o'clock drive time for a little conversation about who we should be in this wonderful state of Minnesota, how we ought to live, who we should be in. Eric and I, Eric's filling in. Eric, are you a fill-in too? Are we both fill-ins?
I'm not filling in. I'm usually here on Thursdays.
You're the regular guy.
Yeah.
You're the donut, and I'm the cream filling.
Yeah, I guess.
That kind of went nowhere in a hurry, didn't it?
Didn't know where that analogy was going.
Yeah, I don't know where that was going either. But hey, I don't know if you know, Eric, it's a beautiful day out there. Again, this is that summer run. We're in the midst of it. This is the reason people say, move to Minnesota. It's because like yesterday till middle of October, people just recognize the greatest place on the planet.
For 3 months, it's perfect weather.
Yeah, it's perfect. And I'll tell you, I haven't been to North Korea, but according to the president, there's some great beaches there. So I thought this is the place I want to live, and I live here on purpose. But I don't know. According to our president, hey, what you ought to do is consider the beach situation in North Korea. I mean, if you're going to pay attention to something about North Korea, it probably ought to be their beaches.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Hey, and by the way, happy birthday to the President of the United States. It's his birthday today.
Oh.
I'm not a fan of the president as the president, but everybody was a baby once. Everybody's loved by somebody. Everybody's the salt of the earth and the light of the world. Everybody's got the same advantages. Everybody's got their same struggles. Not everyone should do every job. I could go into a long list of jobs that I shouldn't have, but that doesn't mean I'm not a person who should be held in esteem and value. But if you're really bad at what you do, and if what you do causes distress and pain and harm to others, you should stop doing it. Sort of rule one about being a person born on the planet. If what you do is ruining things for others, stop doing that thing. So my birthday wish for the president is not that he'd have a great birthday, because, he's probably had 71 other great, fine birthdays, but he'd have a clarifying birthday, that today he would say, you know what, I'm not sure this is going the way my life is intended to go. Hope you just sort of reconsider, all of us. It's a good thing for all of us to do on our date of our birth. Say to ourselves, is this going the way I want? Am I generating the kind of goodness in the world that I want? Or are things better with the way I'm living? Am I doing my work? Am I doing my job in a way that people are sitting around saying, hey, you know what? I'm glad you're doing what you're doing in the world. Like some of us, we just waste our lives, right? And we think, I think I could do more good. So that compels us to, launch radio stations and to be math tutors and to do the good things that we all have to do in the world, because we just feel like we could squeeze a little more. And then some of us stop and say, I don't know, I think maybe I'm causing a ruckus. I think maybe I'm breaking things down. I think things might not be as good as they ought to be because of me. Maybe I'm the problem. Maybe I'm sort of the opposite of Gandhi's call to be the change you want to be in the world. Maybe you're in your own Fight Club moment. Back in the late 90s, early 2000s, this movie Fight Club, when you were the Fight Club character. I don't want to be a spoiler, but it's been out for like 25 years. So if you haven't seen it by now, that's sort of on you. Kind of realizes he's the cause of all of his troubles and all of his pains. Well, happy birthday, Donald J. Trump, President of these United States. I think you need to sort of reconsider. It's a beautiful day here in Minnesota, but it's not a beautiful day in a lot of the spirit of the political life of Minnesota. I'm going to talk a little bit about that later. And it's certainly not in sort of the emotional sense of how this country's going. I have a friend that had this great line the other day. She said she was raised in a family that was really socially conscious. She was from a religious family that was very progressive, and they cared about issues of immigration back in the 80s, of the Cold War. They were highly engaged in work around apartheid in South Africa. Like, they were really thinking, and for her as a little kid, she said, I was raised to just care about really big issues in the world. And I would say to myself, well, what's someone like me supposed to do in such a time of great consequence when there's so many things that are overwhelming? And she said, well, the answer is is not to do nothing, do something. I love that phrase. The answer is, what should you do? Well, not nothing. Do something. So this is your little therapy session for those progressively minded people on their drive time home, or sitting around their house, or called up on their Alexa. Hey, Alexa, play AM 950. And Alexa plays AM 950. Like, if you have your radio on and you have an Alexa sitting in your house, you should just turn up the volume on your radio, and I'll say it. Hey, Alexa, play AM 950. Has anyone ever done that in the studio here, Eric? Like, put an Alexa in here and shown how it works?
No, they haven't.
Wow, wouldn't that be a kick in the pants?
Idea,
I'll think about that on Monday. Maybe I'll bring mine in. We'll show people how it works. Or I think you could say it with Google. I don't have one of those Google devices, but I know you can say something like, "Hey Google," and then play AM 950. So maybe that's what you're doing, or you're out and about. You're in a car, and you're listening to all this. You've got a call to do something. I don't know, whatever it is, just not nothing. Not nothing is no longer an option for those of us who want to see something happen in the world. So, this business about the president's policies all being about his own brand is really something that we have to think about. So I want to set up a little conversation here, and that is, what is it that we are asking for in the world? So I want to do a little political course, if I could, a little class in this drive time therapy session. And that is that in the range of how we collectively engage ourselves together, and some of us in the progressive streams of life, we think a lot about the government, and we think a lot about policy, and we think a lot about political parties, and those things really matter. But there's this larger sense of what we're up to in this world. And if we don't prioritize our passions and our commitments, we can end up really in a finding ourselves in a bit of a box where policy and our partisan party commitments just don't seem to be fulfilling what we want. And I think there's been an imagination in this country from its founding and before, and it's rarely been lived up to. That's a given. It has often been disguised and hidden. But there's been this impulse, this guiding sensibility that what people ought to be about is the common good. That's what we call, or I like to call, the broader politic. That when we join together in politics, it's not a dirty word. It just means we're thinking about everybody. We're thinking about the all of us. Politics is the one part of our society where it's going to take everyone's thoughts and considerations into its purview. It's going to think about everybody. Like your own home or your own life, you can just sort of think about you or your family, and that's good. That's what you ought to do, and you ought to be taking care of your own stuff, and living your life in a way that works for you. And maybe your business is going to think about its own customers. That's a great thing to do. And maybe a nonprofit organization is going to think a little wider about the people who are being left out. But government, the body politic, the all of us, whether that's state government, federal government, county government, thinks about everybody. That's its place. So this notion of the common good, the common political sensibility, that's the heart of the political effort. And your particular policy choices or your particular partisan commitments to fulfilling those policy choices in order to affect the common good ought to work in that order, it seems to me. It's similar to, there's three things that a human life needs, right? It needs food, it needs water, and we all need air. But you could go, I would argue, weeks or months without food. People do that sometimes on purpose. I've done that kind of thing. I've been on a juice diet or gone on a fast. I can go, 30 days, 40 days. Some people do even longer than that. And sometimes it can, your body can live without food. Now, it can't live indefinitely. Some number of weeks you're going to run out. Water, you're really counting that in a number of days. Like you don't put water into your body, and you're talking about a number of days. Air, on the other hand, you're talking minutes. Right? So like you can go without air for minutes, you can go without water for days, and you can go without food for weeks. Now they all matter. They're all really important. They're all something that you really do have to have. I think the same way about politics, policy, and partisanship. I think you need all of those. We're going to have political parties. We're going to argue about this and that. We're going to set particular policies. They really matter. They're like the water in the system. But the appreciation and care for the common good, that is air. That, I think, is what's under assault in our country right now, both with our Republicans in the state of Minnesota and especially nationally. That the Donald Trump-like cult is choking off the airflow of the common good. So we're at a point where if you've ever gone without air, I don't know, maybe you've seen those commercials. They're sort of, I think they're anti-smoking commercials, and the line is, when you can't breathe, nothing else matters, right? And it almost feels like in this country we're being choked out of the common good, where when someone starts talking about just a policy or just partisanship, we say that is really important, but the presidency and the Republican cult-like response to only bowing to whatever Donald Trump wants and what his personal proclivities and his brand extension is, that is not about the common good, is choking it out. So one of the things that I want to encourage progressives to do is to be in conversations for sure about partisanship, because that's going to matter. You want people to vote Democrat, and I want them to vote Democrat in all their elections. And we have to have the right policies. But right now, I think this country is also choking. There's an asthma attack. There's like this allergy to Trump's narcissism and to this anti-values and anti-common good sensibility that is choking out. It's almost like we, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice and ensure domestic tranquility, provide for a common defense, that stuff, that feels like it's being choked out for personal proclivity and punishment of anyone who turns against the administration. So we need to focus ourselves on that common good and on our policies and our partisanship. Hey, this is AM 950. I'm Doug Pagitt. We'll be back after the break. Hey, and this is the spot where the commercials play, but I cut them out for you. So back to the show. Perfect. Can't tell you how much that spurs me on. I've got a real crush, a little love affair with the music of Bruce Springsteen, and so that's fantastic. Thank you, Eric. I appreciate that. Hey, in times of great consequence and overwhelming situations, what's a person to do? Well, not nothing. So find a way to do something. How long can you go without air? That's a really great question. How long can this country go without a sense of the common good? And I think there's a chance for us progressives here that, listen to Progressive Voice of Minnesota on AM 950 at drive time or other times, to ask ourselves, what can we do? And there's some people who I think we can bring along. I was driving yesterday. And I was behind a car that I normally don't do this. It was a stop sign, so I could read a person's bumper sticker. And I got to tell you, I'm not a big bumper sticker fan. Like, I don't know, it's just sort of not my thing. I don't think you should be yelling at people from the back of your car. But this particular car struck my attention because right in the middle of it, it had this right underneath the Buick. It said "Trump sucks" on a bumper sticker, and then to the right of that, there was this elephant, with the stars on the top and the blue and the red bottom, that Republican logo. And it says, "Yes, !" We do exist. Proud liberal Republicans. And sometimes I think it's easy for us to think that only one political party can grab the progressive liberal edge. It turns out for whatever reason, people pick their partisanship differently than they pick their policy and differently than they pick their commitment to the common good. But there's these people who are movable. And one of the things that's happened in the Trump administration, this is what I see happening in our local politics here in Minnesota. So I'm going to go to a little fundraiser for someone running for the state house tonight. And there's a whole lot of people who I like to refer to as those who are experiencing the zeal of the newly disillusioned. I don't know if you're familiar with this phrase, the zeal of the newly converted, but there's this thing that happens when somebody gets into something, like they find a new band, or they get into a new restaurant, or they take on a new idea, or they start into a set of yoga classes, or they listen to a new radio station, and they get all excited about it, right? And they start telling their friends, and you kind of have to let the zeal of the newly converted sort of dissipate before you decide if you're going to believe them or not, and some of us are really excitable. Well, there is, in my impression, a zeal of the newly disillusioned. A whole lot of people who didn't think a lot about politics, or their reflexive thought in their politics was to be Republican or conservative, who have become so disillusioned with what's happening in this country when they see this country opening more than 100 detainment facilities to hold children separated from parents who have been determined to be illegally in the country by the government, separated out, where there's 11,000 children being kept in this country in detention centers, separated from their parents. They just say to themselves, this can't possibly be right. Something's not right about this. When they see and hear the president doing what they're doing, and they see and hear the Republican Party falling into lockstep, they say to themselves, this doesn't seem like a free-thinking, open, expressive society anymore. Something seems to have changed. And all of a sudden they're waking up, or they're becoming disillusioned with their own party, and they're drifting away. So I've got a little audio clip here from a senator, this guy named Bob Corker. And Bob Corker, is from Tennessee. He's not the most, I don't know that he would always go down as being the person with the strongest political spine. But he's not running for re-election. He's been talking about Trump and the failures of the Trump administration and the apostasy for him as a conservative, that Trump isn't even close to being a conservative, which might be the nicest thing you could say about the guy. But he says that there's this cult-like effect that has taken over. So, I don't know, Eric, we're going to give this a try. I don't know how good this audio is. I had to record it myself. I mean, I wasn't standing there, but, I had to find the audio.
It's becoming a cultish thing, isn't it? It's not a good place for any party to end up with a cult-like situation as it relates to a president that happens to be purportedly of the same party.
So what Bob Corker's getting at here is this problem that the president seems to say, if you disavow the president in any way, and then the Republican National Committee sends out a tweet and says, look, if anyone turns against the president, wants to be in politics, we're coming after you. This idea of this, it's not even partisanship. It's not even about the party. It's about the person. It's about, if you turn against this president. One of his advisors, somebody in his cabinet, said that for Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister of Canada, to have turned against the president, there is, quote, a special place in hell for someone who would defy this president on the internet, saying to another leader that there's some sort of a theocracy here, some sort of a God-ordained punishment if you were to speak against the president. Like, to invoke religious language of eternal damnation for that is just into a weird world where either the guy just doesn't care about religion, is just using it as a rhetorical ploy, that he can own up to that. Fair enough. Like, just tell all those religious followers. And I'm a pastor, for crying out loud. I mean, I understand this stuff. This is what I do. I do religion professionally. And I'll tell you, when you start using religion like that, where it is that you've invoked God to be your new Michael Cohen, the new one who's going to punish you as your punisher for failure to fall in line. This sort of idea has turned so many people away. people on their cars driving down Normandale Boulevard, friends of yours, and there's a zeal in the newly disillusioned. And to bring them the call to be about the common good, that starts to ring into the thing that people feel is true, that this is a country where we're going to provide for general welfare and for common defense and liberty and posterity for all the peoples, that all of us. Now, again, we haven't lived up to that. We have made our advances on the backs of the poor, of slaves, of indigenous peoples. There's no doubt about it. But this is no time to turn our backs now and to be imprisoning children in detention centers while their parents are being held in immigration jails. We are at a point where in 2018, we're going to look back at this period where there's 11,000 children being held in federal custody. I think we're going to look back on this as we looked back on the internment of the Japanese and Germans during World War II. We're just going to say, what was going on that people said, that's common good. There's some level of common sense there. This is what's happening. And if we go from common sense too quickly into policy and too quickly into the partisanship, it's like finding someone who's just caught their breath and asking them if they want a drink of water or a sandwich. A drink of water and a sandwich are really, really important. But there's people who are having panic attacks. They're having these Trump-induced asthma-like experiences of the common good slipping away. And that's where we should spend our time and energy so that they know that there is something more that we're all a part of, and then our policy debates, and then our partisanship becomes a sign of good news and not something where it seems like we're just stuck in the same old argument and you're watching someone choke and trying to offer them a little nibbly because it's not what they need at that moment. They need a little fresh air. And there's a lot of us who need a little common good fresh air, it seems to me, in the world. So we're going to be back here on AM 950 with a little, in fact, it's going to be a special little segment here for 3 minutes about some good news. Sometimes resistance is living a good life with your neighbors. Hear about that on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. Sometimes you just got the mood right. You got a little Dr. Johnny Fever going out there. You really nailed that one. That's just right. Hey, Eric, I was mentioning that it's a great day outside. It's beautiful. And, you know, there's a lot of road work going on. Maybe you see that around. Like everywhere I go. I tried to go somewhere this afternoon, had to just turn around, came home, texted somebody and said, it's going to take me forever. There are people working all over on these roads. It's just bananas. And I think we should be, well, I shouldn't say we. I should be a little bit more appreciative of how hard these men and women out there on those road crews work. I've been caught up in traffic, and the road the cross street outside my house has been torn up since the end of April. So I'm regularly seeing these workers. Man, I mean, a road. You could think that, you know, like road workers and they're like county workers, you know, and all those jokes about like how many, you know, county workers does it take to, you know, hold up a flagpole, this kind of thing. But boy, you watch these people for half an hour. You sit there and watch it. Man, they are swinging sledgehammers. They're digging dirt. They're jumping in holes. They're shoveling things. Like they are working extraordinarily hard. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah, all while people are whizzing by at 70 miles an hour.
Yeah, and Frank, I mean, and I was this way. Like I was going off to to see a myofascial massage person that I couldn't get to, and I was like, oh, I can't believe this is taking so long. And then you look over, and that guy's been out there for 5 hours already, you know, and it's 11 o'clock in the morning. He's been out there since 6. And, you know, these women that are just working themselves so hard to get all this done. It's amazing. This is the sense that we have in this country, right? That even when things like our roads are falling apart, people go out and they work really hard. So I'm trying to take this attitude toward road work this summer as if it's this picture of how hard we're all going to have to work to rebuild this stuff. Like there's the structures and the imagination and the hope and the sensibilities and all the rest of that. So I'm taking it as this, like when I see these road workers, like, hey, they're the leaders in what it's going to take for all of us to have to rip something up and lay down a new foundation and dig out a hole and work on the new water table and do all that kind of work. So there's really good people doing a whole lot of things. And I want to make a little pitch for something that those who are looking for doing something good might want to do. A week from today. Now, for you, Eric, you're already working on Thursdays. You obviously work a full Thursday regiment. But next Thursday, you might already know this, it's the summer solstice. I don't know if you keep track of your summer solstice, or of your yearly solstice, your winter and summer solstice. But it is. It's next Thursday, and I happen to know that because I'm putting together this little effort called The Longest Day, and it's the walk, run, roll on the longest day. So sunrise to sunset, we have the most sunlight in Minnesota, and a lot of us are really excited about that. It's the great day when it's so bright in the morning and it's still bright at 9:15, 9:20, 9:30 at night. Now, it does get darker every day after next Thursday. So like tomorrow, next Thursday is the high point. And then winter's right around the corner. So anyway, on that day though, when things are still good, the days are still long, we're inviting people to join a team or do it themselves and be moving that entire day, walking, running, rolling. And you can walk as slow as you want. You can walk on a treadmill. You can walk outside. You can walk up and down some stairs. You can run super slow. You can roll on a tandem bike or on a scooter. You can roll any way you want, but stay active that whole day. And what we're inviting people to do is to be part of a team where for every hour of that day, 15 hours, people contribute $25 for their hour. They take on an hour, like say you'd take on, 9 in the morning till 10 in the morning. You and your team walk, run, roll, you pay $25. Those people all come together. That $375 that makes up that whole day of people having each one of those time slots is money that goes to these kids in an orphanage who are affected by HIV and AIDS in Guatemala. Kids I personally know. It's just fantastic. It's a great thing. So longestday.us, you can find the information about this. You can sign up. There's a little donation link there. It's this is one of those donation things where people take out of their common pot and give it to the other people who have some need. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of needs in this world. There's no doubt about it. And we need all the channels working. These little sweeties in Guatemala, these little ones who can't live with their parents anymore and have to live in an orphanage because they're affected by HIV and AIDS, you're hard-pressed to find a more deserving and a more appreciative and a place where $25 would go quite so far. I know these kids personally. It's absolutely incredible. And there's lots of people who are involved in all kinds of good things. So one of the projects that I want to endeavor into is that we start to take the summer solstice, the longest day of the year, and people make all kinds of fundraisers on that longest day of the year. When the light shines the longest and the brightest, that's a day we're reminded that these feelings of darkness too will pass, and that there's a light that shines, and the darkness is not going to overcome it. I mean, that's a pretty good little story, I think. Anyway, longestday.us. You can find out all the information about it. You can chip in, chime in, walk, run, roll, or maybe you just say, "Hey, I can't walk, run, roll that day, but I'll pay for an hour for somebody who will." I don't know. Maybe somebody pay for your hour. I'm going to do all 15 hours myself.
Yeah, I'll try to keep moving as much as I can in this little room.
Yeah, you could do like finger exercises all day. You could do like little walking trips with your fingers. Okay, so here's what I want to do on the second half of this segment. And for the last few minutes with the callers, do you know something good that's going on in the world? Is there a little bit of brightness? Is as the days are growing longer and brighter for the next week, is there something that you feel you want other people to know about? Maybe it's a project you're involved in. Maybe it's a good story about someone here in Minnesota. It's something that you know and believe is something good. So give us a call over here at the station. If you're new to calling in here, the phone number is 952-946-6205. Maybe you've got your own story about something good that's going on, your way of participating, or a rumor that you've heard about someone else, that there's all kinds of goodness happening in the world. Our state workers, our road workers, people at in your family, people around your neighborhood, neighborhood. There's so much going on, and it can be easy for us to get fixated on all the problems in the sense that the democracy is falling apart and being choked out and all the rest of that we talked about in the first half of the show here. But there's also these other good things that are going on that remind all of us that we can hang around. So the number is 952-946-6205. And I'd love to hear your stories, because I think people often aren't reminded enough about the goodness that other people see in the world, that as heavy as it can feel, as dark as it can feel sometimes, as sort of dank as it can seem, that there's this other goodness that comes, and this other goodness that rolls. And that's something that we want to talk about, and we want to be able to tell each other about, and we want to even practice in our ability to tell people about such things. So we're gonna roll it over to Mark. Mark, you've got a little piece of good news for the rest of us. You got something that some kind of light that shines in all this. Mark, what's your piece of this story? Mark, maybe we lost him. Hey, Mark. Thanks for the...
Doug, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Hey, thank you for making your contribution. What is it that you know about?
Sure. And, well, I just want to remind you that longest day is the alliteration of namaste.
Is that right?
So that kind of works out for you.
How about that?
What I want to do is...
I love that. My wife's a yoga instructor. She's going to love that.
Yeah, well, there's a lot going on right now. But you talked about making a difference, and you know, Janet talked about it, and Mike talked about it, and I just want to commend Jennifer, because that's what being active truly is. It's being interested enough to go out and acquire your own information, to draw your own conclusion that's not, that's impartial, that's unbiased, and that's based strictly on information that you seek. Because in today's fake news is nothing new. Thomas Jefferson warned us about the power of the newspapers back in 1776.
Yeah, I appreciate that. There's a lot of fake... we're going to cut you off just because of the commercial here, but there's a lot of fake news, Mark. You're right, and there's a lot of real good things that are also happening, and the way you overcome all that talk of fakeness is with something real. AM 950, Progressive Voice of Minnesota. And this beautiful day in the Twin Cities, AM 950, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota. If you haven't rolled down that car window yet, if you've been running that air conditioning, if you haven't slid outside right after this show ends, open that door, give it a little breath out there. It's awfully beautiful. A lot of good things in this wonderful state this time of the year. No better place to live for a lot of us than here in Minnesota. I'm a Minnesota and a Minneapolitan advocate around the country, around the world, telling people that. They don't always know it. They don't always believe it. But they're convinced when they come on a day like today. It's one of those great days. And I've been suggesting a couple times today that, when you live in times of great consequence and overwhelming struggle, what do? Well, not nothing. You do something. I know somebody who does something. My wife. She's calling. My wife's calling on the line. It says that up on the screen there. Mrs. Pagitt, your wife. Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you by the magic of telephones and radio. What are you doing?
Well, the last caller, and you couldn't hear him quite well. I'm just trying to tell you something good that's happening in the world.
Yeah, what is something good that's happening in the world? Because longest day sounds like namaste. Did you pick that one up on Mark, the last caller? Did you hear that bit? That's a good one.
Yeah, I heard that. That's pretty interesting. I'm going to look into it. There's so many good things happening in the world, and of course, I love what you're doing and about with the kids in Guatemala. And to me, the kids are the ones that we always need to put effort and intention toward helping. And our daughter happens to work for a nonprofit organization called Friends of Ngong Way, and they also help provide education and just like a life and food and health care and whatnot for kids living in Africa and Kenya, and it's pretty amazing organization. And she just got back from there, so I just wanted to say there's another really good thing happening, and applaud them.
Well, aren't you the best? Thanks for the pity call too. I appreciate that. I'll take that one from my wife. That's awesome. I'll take that. Thank you, dear.
I'm listening.
Yeah, thank you for listening too. AM 950, the Progressive Voice of Minnesota, and the conversation place between Doug and his wife, Shelley. 952-946-6205. That's the number she called. And I bet she had to write it down because I said it like 5 times. 952-946-6205. If you've got a little piece of good news for the rest of us here that are making our way, the things that we're noticing in the world, the way that, we've got our political situation is unraveling in this country, in my view, in a way that's putting the republic in crisis. I mean, I can't overstate that enough. I think it's like a natural disaster that is striking, and there's no way to overstate the level of crisis that people are feeling in this country and how bad it is. And that's on top of the systemic struggles that have come through economic injustice, a country built on slavery, a country built on a history of imprisoning the peoples of the lands of the United States. Of subjugation of peoples, of sexism. I mean, there's a lot of things, and then you put on top of that, like, we're just trying to make our way as a people, and we're just trying to find this more beautiful way forward. We're just trying to, as the political line would be, we're just trying to perfect this union, make it a little bit more perfect in some way, shape, or form. And then you lay on top of all of that this government that chooses to pass laws and to enforce laws that separate parents from their children to make a point. I do want you to call in with some good news, 952-946-6205, or maybe just head over to longestday.us and sign up to be part of something good, or spend your time in your good thing. But I also want to remind all of us that this country, the United States of America, right now has chosen to enforce a really bad law, which doesn't have to be enforced, first of all, but they chose to enforce a really bad law to separate children from their parents if the parents come illegally into this country. And they're doing it. Their stated purpose. This isn't even like conspiracy theory hyperbole here. This is what the people who are running border security asked the administration to pass, was this law that would separate parents from their children in order to show that they take it seriously, and that if you try to come into this country against immigration law and you have a child with you, you will be separated. And they think that will be a deterrent. Just consider this for a moment. They're willing to separate parent from child as a deterrent so other people will take our laws more seriously. Can you imagine the rationale that must go on where they say, you know what I think is worth it is if other parents coming from Mexico or from Guatemala or from Honduras or from Nicaragua, that these parents are going to say, well, I'm not going to come now because they might separate me from my children, that's worth it to them to send that message. It's worth it to separate a parent from child, to take a screaming child out of the arms of their parent, to lock up a parent, and to put a child into one of 100 detention centers that are holding children. We don't call them jail. We just call them a center where we have to hold them until you can send them back. And the primary argument is not that they're a threat, but laws are laws. They have to be enforced, and this will send a message. That's the kind of thing that says you're more committed to your law than you are to the people for whom the law is meant to protect. When the law does damage that breaking the law doesn't do, and there's more damage, that's called disproportionate legal action. There's laws against that. That's what makes this all so painful, is that there's decisions being made by our government and so many politicians not talking about it. So I'd love to hear if we've got time for a couple more. If somebody can still call in, 952-946-6205. What's the other way around that? What's the thing that's happening that you know is a good thing in this world? Because we know that lack of common good is happening. But is there something else that you know about that you think is worthwhile for other people to know and to hear about, because we're going to keep seeing this. We're going to keep seeing this administration, the Trump administration, is going to continue to pass laws and to enforce laws in whole new ways that make it harder on people and not to benefit people. It's the opposite of the common good that we talked about a bit ago. The common good would say, what is good for most people? When you are willing to separate a child from their parent, or frankly, when you're willing to punish anyone as a deterrent to another person's behavior, you are using that person for your purposes and for the benefit of another person, and that's usury. Like that violates almost every moral and ethical code that you would use the pain and suffering of one person in order to benefit another, either yourself by not having someone violate your law that you hold to, or to prevent someone else from violating a law. You're using a human being's suffering for the purpose not of that person's betterment or of society's betterment, but in order to benefit yourself or someone else. That is just, it is the definition of cruelty. It's unbelievable. AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota, where you hear about the good things, you hear about the struggles, and you know that in our pursuit of the common welfare, of the goodness for us all, we're going to do something about it. Hey, thanks for the Bruce Springsteen too at the end. I'm Doug Pagitt, filling in here on Drive Time on AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota.
Sprung from